This is Eric from IONCINEMA.com here at the Marrakech International Film Festival, and I'm speaking to Matthew Rankin. Matthew Rankin, for one of the films where the title summarizes both the content and feeling expertly. I love the choice in title. How did learning the language make you more worldly, and how did learning Persian make you more Canadian, if that makes sense?
Yeah, that's great.
And Rasulaf was there yesterday, which is like,
he was, yeah.
That's crazy.
The master.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't think he understood anything in the Q&A. I looked over, I think he was asleep at one point.
Oh no.
Yeah, but he doesn't speak English or French, you know, so.
He set the switch off.
He needed a nap. He's earned a nap.
Yes.
So if the Q&A can, serve to, stimulate his melatonin, I'm happy to provide that. Well, I feel like I'm always learning language. My first language is English, but I've now lived in French for a long time. And so my life has involved this kind of process of stepping out of myself.
Mm-hmm.
When I came to Montreal, it was a time, it was still sort of post-referendum pathology. There was a lot of, tension. You know what I mean? You remember that time, right?
Yes, there's remnants. There's a character in this film which would be lost on a lot of international audiences,
yeah.
But reminds us of Pirouz, which was this big divisive figure.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's it. I mean, there was a lot of tension at that time, and to be a unilingual Anglophone from Winnipeg, as I was at that time, it was a very uncomfortable position to be in. But it was also, in an interesting way, very inspiring. I really wanted to learn French. I arrived in Montreal. Within the first week, I knew that everything that was interesting about the city would require me to know French, and that I was not going to be happy in the McGill ghetto with these brats from Upper Canada College, and so it required me to step outside of myself and really, it's vulnerable to learn a new language and to, especially when, you're on the other end of an oppositional paradigm, which is uncomfortable.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I feel like in a weird way, like language learning has been part of this process of stepping outside of myself. And I would say that learning Farsi was like this too. And I'm still learning Farsi. And I'm still trying to step out of myself. I feel like I'm really interested in spaces that are kind of, as much as we like to organize the world into Tupperware containers that are sealed off from each other. You belong here and I belong here. And don't get me wrong, I think there's a quality to solitude. I really believe that. I think one of the reasons Quebec cinema is as important as it is and as alive as it is, and as influential as it is because Quebec has insisted on its solitude. I think there's a quality to solitude. Don't get me wrong. There's a quality to being in a Tupperware container. But we all know that pushed too far, that's not good for us.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? We start to get, too much solitude, you start to get angry and contemptuous and bitter and suspicious and all these other horrible things. So you need, the space between people is, we do have to create a space where we can encounter each other. And there's great distances to transcend in the world. And there's huge oppositional paradigms. I feel now, especially since COVID, the oppositional paradigms are much more rigid than they were before it. And there's a catharsis to creating a space of encounter between people. And there's a catharsis to creating proximity where you might otherwise imagine enormous distance.
Yes.
To creating a river where you imagine a wall. And so that's what we try to do with the movie, and the movie is about stepping outside of yourself. It's about where does one person end and another person begin? That's the space that's really interesting to me. It's like when you stand on the Canadian-American border, or even more extreme, the Quebec-Ontario border. What do you see? Where does it actually one end and the other begin? It's a very ambiguous space. As much as we try to draw these lines, they're very, very difficult to delineate, as we experience them as actual humans. Canada is a space that can and should be constantly redefined. So I feel like we are kind of redefining that space with the movie, but I mean, at the same time, we don't really think of it as a Canadian movie. We don't think of it as an Iranian movie. We think of it as sort of a confluence of both.
I thought this was a film with a lot of entry points. On my second viewing, however, I gravitated to this idea of this place of grieving and melancholy. And then I was reminded that memory and history sometimes they have this function of allowing us to remember the past, which could be a negative space or negative place, but with time and distance, we can sort of reframe how we think about something that comes from a place of grief. So I wanted to get a sense of, like, you have this this element where Rial is very present, and this figure was, I believe he was lynched, if I know my history.
You could say that. I mean, there was a trial, and he was convicted of treason and hanged. You could call that.
But how we look back at him today, we look back at him with a whole other a concept or appreciate. We have an appreciation for what he attempted to do. Did you feel as if there was a cathartic? I mean, this film is a lot of things, but did you feel as if this was a vehicle for you to sort of like reframe your own personal dealings with potential grief or isolation? Was this a way for you to reassess the past and to look at it with something with an array of hope, I guess?
Yes. I do think of it as an optimistic movie. As far as Louis Riel is concerned, what I love about Louis Riel is, well, there's two things. One is the idea of métissage, the idea of blending, blended families, and new nationhood, I mean, Louis Riel was all about the Winnipeg that I love is Louis Riel's Winnipeg. It's the new nationhood. It's the idea of creating an original space, a new space that would resist the North American mainstream. I feel like that's something you can trace from Louis Riel through the 1919 general strike, through to the Winnipeg Film Group and Guy Madden and Marcel Zao. Like, this is real countercultural kind of impulse in Winnipeg. And I really love that. And of course the idea of métissage, I mean, he was a leader of the Métis Nation, and the idea of métissage and blending and a new nationhood and the idea of mixing is something that really is a tuning fork for the whole movie. And even the Manitoba Act, I feel like the clairvoyance of the Manitoba Act, which was Louis Riel's great political achievement, is exactly that. It forecast a world that was hybrid in nature, and where there would be a deeper sense of belonging and a deeper sense of family and solidarity. Thank you. And as a constitutional document, that's what the Manitoba Act is about. This is a space in which many different people belong, and that belonging will not be questioned. And that's so that was that's a big inspiration to today. I feel like he was seeing far into the future with that constitutional idea, and it's one that is very current. And bizarrely, we're now living, I think, in a time that is as much progress as we've made since 1870. The world is now suddenly becoming very rigid. and very intolerant. And so I feel like that the idea of métissage is all the more precious. As far as, the kind of melancholy of the movie, I mean, there is something melancholy about all of this. Mm-hmm. There is something melancholy about the beauty of our very limited time together. And we're here for a very short time, and we're all alive at the same time. And that's it's everything. I mean, that is amazing. You know what I mean? And we spend a lot of that time, organizing the world into oppositions. Mm-hmm. And there's something very sad about that, So, I mean, you can't have these idealistic longings. At least I can't. I think because my brain is sort of wired for irony to some degree, that I can't give myself over wholeheartedly to, and with absolute earnestness, to total idealism. It's why I can't be a good Esperantist, because I can't believe 1000% in a thing. It's why I can't be an ideologue, because I'm aware that the world is complicated. But I can be an idealistic person who feels some melancholy.
I have to cut the interview short, but
I'm just getting going.
Yes, thank you so much for your cinema, Matthew. I've been a fan since your shorts, and what I really admire and what I really like is that this film reminded me of your first feature and how you allow artisans, other voices to elevate and bring their A game. Yeah. And you get a sense of this at every single juncture in this film. From the little, there's all these like Easter eggs, there's all these little moments, there's humor that if you look at the frame differently, you'll find humor in one corner. The tone, I love how you're able to bring your Avengers or your Marvel X-Men together and really give a place for creativity and community in your cinema. So congratulations on this. Eric from IONCINEMA.com. If you want to support us, subscribe below. For more reviews, interviews, film festival coverage from Sundance, Cannes, Toronto, you want to check out these guys on this side.